super excited to share yet another amazing purpose journey and story with you. We never know what story is going to inspire us and get us started on our purpose or continue on our purpose. So today we have with us Darren. Thank you so much for joining us today, Darren. Where
Thank
are
you very
you?
much.
Yeah, absolutely. And where are you in the world? So we have an idea.
So I'm based in Sheffield in the United Kingdom, which is about halfway up the country. So quite central for the UK, so I can get to London or I can get up to Scotland or cover anywhere in the UK.
Beautiful. All right. And so just like the other purpose stories and journeys, I have not heard this story. And so alongside you, I get to hear and unfold how Darren's purpose has come to be. And so with that, I'll just ask you, Darren, to take us back to your first aha moments and the steps that have led you to finding your purpose and your journey and leading us to today.
Okay, so it can be quite a long journey. So going back actually going back 24 years, I was hired up into County Durham, which is in the northeast of England, which is a very deprived area. There's lots of unemployment. There's lots of areas where there used to be coal mining and all that industry's gone. So there's lots of deprivation. There's lots of people unemployed and stuff like that. So in the area, they'd actually done a scheme where they had companies come into the area and they created a business park for area companies to come into the area and take over and help the local economy. I was one of those people hired and moved to County Durham from the south of England. So the entire idea was to help the local economy, but they hired people into the local economy. And the reason why they hired people in was because there wasn't anybody in the local economy that was actually already trained up. There was nobody with the skill set, nobody with the knowledge. So they had to bring people in. And what that done was it increased the local economy. There was lots of new people moving in. There was lots of people buying very cheap houses because nobody wanted to live there at the time. So the housing market shot up. The local people started to borrow more money, and that had an impact on them. So they had new cars, they improved their house, all this kind of stuff. And then the tax break stopped. And to cut a long story short, tax break stopped and all the companies disappeared. So what that left was this whole area that for 5 years was promised that all these jobs were there for the local economy, and then it just went. And even now, they're still quite derelict in some of the areas. Some of the buildings are still empty now because they've never been able to refill with new businesses. And I realized at that point that was the wrong way of doing things. And it didn't help the local economy. It had a short-term fix, but it helped more the international businesses that moved there and got tax breaks. They just moved to the next site every time there was a new tax break, and they just kept moving around the country. So it didn't help the local economy. It didn't help grow the local businesses or anything like that. So I thought that there's got to be a better way of doing things. And jumping forward a couple of years, I decided to get into M&A, buying businesses. And I thought, how could I use my skill set with buying businesses to help people? So my thought was at the time, and it was a good thought, but it didn't work, was to buy a business and then help staff to create their own businesses and creating an almost like a micro economy from that business. So say, for instance, the marketing team of that business would start a marketing company to start working with other people, and then they'd hire more and more staff. And the idea was they would then help their staff to start their own businesses. So it would grow into a micro economy. The problem with that is going back over to the banks to borrow money. Banks don't like to lend money to people who are going to give it away. So my idea of not cutting the staff, but actually training them to do more stuff didn't fit with the bank's idea of how M&A should work, which is buy a business, sack a load of staff, sell it to the next person, make loads of money. So I was looking for new ways of doing things. And after COVID, and there was a lot of businesses that were going out of business, I realized that actually a lot of the businesses that were going out of business was going out of business because the owners had got fed up, they got tired, and they didn't have any way of selling their business because a lot of businesses don't sell. So I came up with the idea of Mobius, which was to buy the businesses with the staff. So creating an employee ownership program where the staff would actually own the majority share of the business. And what I would do is actually work with the staff to grow the business using collaboration. So, for instance, if you're a small business, you might not be able to get a fuel card because you haven't got enough fuel use. And if you do get it, you don't get a massive discount. Whereas if you go to the furthest degree and you go to a large multinational or you go to a large company like a trucking company, they actually buy the fuel at cost price. So even though they go to the fuel station, they gas up the vehicles and they can drive off. The payment is actually at the lowest possible price. But small businesses can't achieve that. So they're actually locked out of this cheap marketplace because of their size. So if you collaborate with, say, 100 businesses, you've suddenly got enough scale to buy the fuel at a much cheaper price, which may be 20, 30 pence a litre cheaper than the average forecourt. So there's a lot of savings there that can be made. And if you then look at all the other options that people buy, telephony, voice over IP systems, IT solutions overall, and then start looking at how you link data together. So if a member of the public buys from one customer, from one company, you can use that information with another company in the group. You can actually share that information, say, well, actually, this person is buying this product and you've got a like product that they might also appreciate. So you start advertising. You've also got a massive group of staff that are really into actually buying the business themselves and actually being involved in the business. And one of the things with employee ownership is you end up with a business that staff don't want to leave. So you have this benefit of staff retention being massive because they're now involved in the business. They're now receiving a benefit from the business. And that allows them to get really involved in the business and they tend not to leave. Now that's a two-edged sword. It's good, but it's also bad. So there's an example in the UK where companies will get to a certain age, about 100 years, and then the staff are so long in the tooth that they've been there since they left school. And they become more and more adverse to change. So one of the other benefits of having multiple independent companies is you can move staff between those companies and allow staff to see the benefit of it. So they can actually move from one company to another, still receive the benefit of employee ownership, but they're now taking skill sets from one business to another and freeing up staff positions so you bring new blood in. So as you're moving the business around, it can actually move with the time. So if you've got another pandemic, which touch wood, it doesn't happen, but if it does, some businesses will have to shut down, but you can redeploy those staff to businesses that don't have to shut down. So you can actually be more resilient in hard times. So I'm working on a process of how to run a business for 100 years, and it's all around the long-term vision. So one of the problems I think with the economy globally is a very short-term thinking process. So if your business is owned by a shareholder or shareholders, if it's publicly floated, their interest is in making money, not retaining the business. Whereas if you think about the long-termism of the business, it's not necessarily the right thing to do to maybe outsource. Short-term it is, but long-term it isn't. So if you start looking on the long-term, it means a slower growth profile, but it means you can actually outlast your competitors because you become a stronger business overall. So that's my vision of the way I'm going to change the world.
Wow, that is so amazing. I mean, we see the closest thing that I can see that's doing something similar but not the same is Publix, in that, you know, the people that work there own part of the shares. So they're all invested, and you can tell, you know, that's a local grocery store chain, that when you go into the store, the employees take pride in the store. And so I can't imagine if they were all part owners,
Yes.
how that enthusiasm would increase dramatically. So that is such a great story, and wow, such an amazing vision. So yeah, first I just want to celebrate from, you know, where you came and what happened, and now what you've created out of it is the opportunity for businesses to be resilient, to to really collaborate and work together. I love that, and just
Yeah.
celebrating that. So what do you think are a few of the values that have got you to here, you know, seeing from that example that you gave of the business that their values were kind of self-centered and selfish, like they just bounced around, to what now you're doing?
Well, I think it's part of humanity. We need to be more socially driven and having that social impact of a business. So one of the biggest things, I mean, I'm a capitalist at the end of the day. We all need to make money, but capitalism itself, when left unchecked, can actually mean that it damages the local economy and it damages the people, and it uses the weaker people to exploit them. And I just think that actually when you build people up and you support people within your organization, they're going to support you. So one of the examples is during COVID, a lot of businesses, they were struggling. When it first happened in the UK, the businesses didn't know what to do. They were just told, we're going to have to lock down, we're going to have to close the businesses, we're going to have to do this. So some companies actually just said, right, you're all sacked. So all the staff then dissipated into other businesses and disappeared. And then you've got, as soon as the lockdown stopped, those businesses started back up and they didn't have any staff, and all the best staff leave. And it's one of the things that you find within businesses when you want to reduce your staff level. Say you take on a business. So one of the things with M&A that most M&A people do is they will reduce their staff count by 10%, because that goes straight to the bottom line. It makes business worth more, and then you can sell it to the next person with that profit margin, and you make profit. That's how you very quickly sell a business for more money than you brought it. The problem is when you go to a staff, say you've got 100 people, and you say, right, 10%, that's 10. That's a nice easy number. We're going to reduce the staff by 10%. Within the rules of how you actually make people redundant, you can't just cherry pick the ones you don't like. You have to go through a process. You have to go through consultation and all this kind of stuff. And what happens is the staff get scared. And when staff are scared for their job, productivity goes down for a start. So instantaneously, they're already running 80% capacity regardless. So you've already lost 20% of your work productivity. But the other thing that happens is if you're a really good worker, you're really skilled in your industry, you've got loads of knowledge and everybody knows you, and you just put out on LinkedIn or social media, oh, I'm a bit worried about my job, people are going to snap you up. You're going to walk to another job straight away. And that person's your highly skilled member of staff. That's your gold star member of staff that you really need. And they've walked. Now, the bottom of the pile, the ones you probably wanted to get rid of are the ones that are a little bit older. They're not as fast. They're not as productive. Maybe they're new into the business. They haven't actually worked there for very long. They don't know much about the industry. They're not very productive on account of all the rest of the staff. And they're the ones that you want to get rid of, but they're the ones that can't get another job. So they're going to hold on until the redundancy. They're going to hold on as long as possible. And what would normally happen is you lose the top 10% and you lose the bottom 10%. And then you're left with the middle ground of people that they get along, they do the job, the plodders of life. And your business is now plodding. And that short-term thought process means that you've just impacted your business when you actually wanted to make it worth more. So the next person comes along, they see the business has 20% less staff potentially. Oh yeah, it's running really well, but you've actually damaged it. And then they want to sell the business or they want to improve the business. So they reduce the staff numbers again. And it's not necessarily through sale. It could be through when people buy new machinery. You buy a brand new super duper computer that does all this stuff for people. And you afford it and you cost it based on the reduction of staff. And again, those people that you lose are the people with knowledge. So say you're manufacturing widgets. It doesn't matter what you're manufacturing. All your machinery is about manufacturing widgets, but also your staff skill sets manufacturing widgets. So when you then outsource that, or maybe you buy a new machine that actually produces the same number of widgets with less staff, they get rid of the staff, and then they don't know how to make a new widget. There's no innovation. So as soon as the widget market starts to dwindle, they no longer have a marketplace where they can actually move into a new product line because they don't have the staff anymore. The staff have gone. So they've damaged themselves long term. And especially with outsourcing, if you outsource, so everybody wants to outsource to China. China's the biggest place at the moment. It's changing slightly. People are thinking Vietnam and other places. But when you take a product and you move it to China, you're moving all the infrastructure and everything else, and they're producing your product. But that's a third-party company. So they're not going to invest in inventing new parts of your business or making your product cheaper. You go in and say, I want it cheaper. They lower the quality. So now you've got either a lower quality product or you've got a product that's being made very well by an external person. And if you look at Apple phones, they were made in China, and now you've got a Chinese company that can produce phones that are just as good quality as Apple. And strange enough, they all work in the same area. So you're losing that capability and you're selling your product. Now, as soon as that product becomes end of life, you've lost all that innovation. So you've lost your company. And I've seen companies that were doing very, very well in the UK, manufacturing in the UK, they've outsourced. And now all they are is basically a reseller for somebody else's product. Mm. And yeah, they still make some money, but they're not employing anybody in the UK. They're no longer a benefit to the local economy.
Wow. And so give us an example of, you know, your 100-year vision for this business and having it employee owned and how that turns that on its head.
So when you're making decisions, if you're making decisions from the boardroom and you're in the boardroom, you're making decisions, you have to think about who the shareholders are and what they want. So the first thing you do is you consider that shareholdership. Now, if you're publicly traded, you have to maintain your dividend payments. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have dividend payments, people are going to sell your shares, your share value is going to drop down, and then your company can actually be closed, even though it's making profit. You become worthless overnight, effectively. So the concern of the boardroom is always on the shareholders. By taking the employee ownership and putting that as shareholders, you're now considering the shareholders still, but the shareholders are the staff. So it changes the way the considerations are made, because how are we going to improve this business? How are we going to take the business forward? Is now a longer term decision making. So you've instantaneously made it into a long term decision making. So it's not a quick fix. Let's reduce, let's sell this part of the product, or let's do this to keep the dividends running, because the staff are more likely to accept a reduction in the dividends to protect the company. So now you're thinking, how do I protect the company? And it's all about that long term thinking process to say, how do I ensure that the company's going to be there in 100 years? So all of this is all around that sort of centered, how do we look after people? And at the end of the day, if the people are actually making decisions for the staff, you're going to protect that business. It's going to be there for 100 years. And we've seen this with the Japanese process. So a lot of people look at the Japanese companies that have been around for 1,000 years. And the reason why they've been around for 1,000 years is because they've gone through multi-generational change. And all you do is every single generational change in Japan, what they do is they review the company and they look at the company and say, right, who do we have in the company? What skills do they have? What desires do they have? What's our customer base? What do they want? How do they want to change? What is moving? And the new owner, the next generation, reviews this on a holistic manner. So it's not just a case of what can I sell that makes money. It's about what interests are there within the team, what skill sets are there, and what products can we make. And it means that companies that are maybe creating trading cards end up being one of the biggest electronics companies. You know, if you look at Nintendo, they started making trading cards. They were just paper cards that they were making. And now they're one of the largest electronic companies. And they changed because the environment changed. And having that kind of mentality where your company is actually the people in it, not just the product you make. So it doesn't matter what product you make as long as people in it are able to make it. And it makes it very human centric. You've also got other things around when you're making decisions, you're making it based on what's good for not only the people there, but also the people next to them. So you're not going to make a long-term decision to pollute the atmosphere. So we all know that there's lots of pollution in the world, and you know, pollution is a major problem, but we pretend it's not by outsourcing it to China. And we pretend that the pollution that we produce in China for our products in the West is not our problem, but it's our pollution. We have created that pollution. And it doesn't matter if it's in China or on your doorstep, because you still breathe the same air. So it makes all those decisions a longer term, longer thinking process. So my 100-year plan is that these companies will keep buying new companies and keep growing the businesses and actually bringing out. So my plan is to 100 businesses in the UK over 10 years. And then over 20 years, 100 businesses in 10 different countries, and actually spread this idea worldwide, because actually it will help all economies. And if you start interacting with these companies, and companies can start interacting with each other, you can start selling products from, you know, China that China's producing very well in the UK market or in the American market, and sharing resources between all the different markets and growing each of the companies, but in a fair and equal manner. And you're not creating a large multinational corporation. You're creating a small independent businesses that have access to that large multinational. So you're actually opening that up.
You're creating a collaboration community, and a holistic collaboration community, which is such a great vision. We definitely need this in every country. So
Well, that's the plan.
yeah, that's amazing. Well, you know, what would be the size that is ideal for these companies? Is there a minimum amount of staff? Like how does that process go about
So
evaluating?
in the UK, there's certain rules. So we've got some legislation in the UK that allows me to take over a business, and the owner can sell the business with no capital gains tax. So it's a massive tax haven. At the moment, it's 20%. So you think if you're selling £1 million business, that's £200,000 that has to go to the government. So in the UK, they don't pay that £200,000. It stays with the owner. So there's a massive benefit there. But the knock-on effect of that is there's laws around how you do it and how you set it up. So there is a minimum number of staff, and that's really about between 10 and 20 staff is a minimum. You could do it with 10. You could, in theory, do it with 5, but it's really hard. But 10 is a real minimum number of people. Maximum is none. It's unlimited. You could do this with 1 million people in the business, because the way the shareholdership works is you don't personally, as an employee, own a share. What happens is a trust is created to own the business, and you will be a beneficiary member of the trust. So there's none of this, you could buy shares and we'll lend you some money to buy the shares, or we'll do some sort of salary sacrifice to pay for the shares. This is, you are just a member of the business. So it's a very quick way of actually allowing people into the business, and they don't have to put up their house. They don't have to borrow money. They are just part of it. So you could have 1 million employees and it would just be the same process. So there's
That
no
is
limits.
wow. Well, if you're listening and you have a business that has at least 10 people, you can see right here on the screen that you can book a call
Yep.
with Darren and get started today. I mean, this sounds like an amazing opportunity. I just can't wait for it to roll out in the US and for the rest of the world, because like you're saying, the pollution is happening in China, but it's affecting our whole world. So the more quickly all of our businesses get on this long-term thinking, the better for our world, our economy, our communities,
Yep.
everything. So just want to really thank you, Darren, and sharing your vision and your story, and super excited and grateful to be a part of this. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Yeah. Any last words that you want to share with stuck business holders?
There's always a way forward. This is one of the problems. I think a lot of business owners are stuck in a rut, and the usual way of answering the problems doesn't always work for every business. So a lot of business owners will get to the retirement age and think, I'm just going to sell the business. But 80% of businesses don't sell. That means your retirement fund, your retirement idea is all a pipe dream until you sell the business, especially if you're reliant on that sale process. So if you think that you're going to sell your business in 5-6 years time, and that's going to be your retirement fund, you need to really start looking now to understand actually what are the options available to you. How can I manage this exit? Because the business won't be ready and you're not ready for that sale, which means that somebody will not come along and just magically buy your business. If you are the only person that knows how to do something, your business is worth very little. So you have to protect your own future by actually speaking to somebody like myself who can come in, review your business and work with you to make your business worth more, and then hopefully sell it to the staff to ensure that the staff actually get a business that's workable, they can maintain it, and it's going to continue for the next future generations, hopefully in the next 100 years, maybe even 1,000.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again so much. It's been a pleasure.
No problem at all.